You are listening to the Jeff Rubin Show, but before we start the episode, I just wanted to tell you about our new sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is a platform that you can use to create websites, you can use it to create blogs, galleries, portfolios, almost anything. Well, not like a car or anything, but almost anything online, you can make it with Squarespace. And what makes this site so great is that it's easy to use. It is so easy to use. I checked this thing out. I actually think my parents could use it. I think so easy my parents could use it is probably offensive to a lot of people, but a terrific tagline for any technology product. And I think it fits Squarespace. It's drag and drop. You're just telling it what you want. You're not wrestling with code. And then sometimes I think when something's easy to use, you end up with crude results. But that's not the case with Squarespace. It makes these very professional websites. They adapt if people log on with their phone or their tablet. That's hard to do. That's hard. I work at a website. It is difficult to keep up with that stuff. With Squarespace, you don't have to worry about it. They've got it all under control for you. It automatically hooks up to your social account, so you can automatically update the website. It's really rather neat, and here is the best part. If you go to the website, squarespace.com, and use the promo code PILEDRIVER, we're going to use different promo codes every week, and this week's a wrestling episode. So go to squarespace.com, enter the promo code PILEDRIVER. You will get a free trial, no credit card required. Just sign up, start making your website, and 10% off your first purchase. Squarespace.com, promo code PILEDRIVER. Okay, let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Jeff Rubin Show. I am Jeff Rubin, and today I am joined by Matt McCarthy, a comedian who has a very funny stand-up album called Come Clean. He is a member of Front Page Films, who created many hilarious internet videos, including the Batman series on College Humor. But today, Matt is on the show to discuss his stint writing for professional wrestling. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you very much, Jeff Rubin.
You know, I know about your comedy. I know about your videos. I don't know much about what you did with professional wrestling. What was your exact job?
I was a creative writer for a little less than a year. I quit. I started there November 22nd, 2011, and I quit October 17th, 2012.
And there is, of course, the WWE, right? The Big Show.
Yeah, man, and not to be confused with Paul White,
the Big Show who wrestles for the WWE.
Right.
So you're a creative writer for effectively the only wrestling outlet out there. How did you end up working there?
I got really lucky. I've never made it a secret. It's a good example about just being honest with people and being honest with yourself. I have never made a secret about being a lifelong, unabashed, unashamed wrestling fan. And my stint there did not change that. A lot of people ask, do I still watch it? It's like I watch it even more now. I think it's even more fascinating and interesting. But at any rate, the company, I guess they go through a lot of writers. It's a very demanding job, and it's not for everyone, and it's not for me. And I'm a huge wrestling fan, and I really wanted it to work, but there was no way I could. You have no time for anything else. And like you said, I do stand up, and I've been lucky enough to get cast in like acting jobs and stuff, and that's stuff I want to keep doing, but I couldn't do both. So at any rate, they had reached out to a headhunter. I can't even remember the name of the company, but it's just like any other corporate executive headhunting company. They had been reaching out to comedy writers and TV writers. And eventually, because I found out about the job middle of September in 2011. And like I said, I got the job at the end of November.
Was that something you had always wanted to do? Did you always imagine yourself doing this? Or did someone say, hey, did you want to write for pro wrestling? And you were like, oh, maybe.
Well, what wound up happening was, well, to answer your first question is, yeah, absolutely. This is something I've always wanted to do. And it's something that's, something that they've offered for the last 10 years or so. I graduated college in '01, and that was about the time that that WWE really started reaching out to TV writers and expanding beyond, because by the late '90s, there were TV writers in there, but very, very few. I mean, only I'm saying maybe even less than 3.
So who was it mostly?
It was Vince. It's Vince's show. It's always been Vince's show, Vince McMahon. And before then, it was, Vince and Shane, his son Shane McMahon. And then, Jim Ross was the executive vice president of talent relations. And so he would bring in a lot of talent, a lot of wrestlers. And James E. Cornette, he's just... and both of those guys, they were never wrestlers, but they've been just integrated in the system, in the business. They were either play-by-play guys, or Jim Cornette is very notorious as a manager, but creative minds, custom built for pro wrestling. And guys like Bruce Pritchard, who's now over at TNA,
which is another competitive wrestling league,
right? And competitive being very loose of a term. The WWE has no competition.
Yeah, they seem to be a monopoly in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
So it's really a pretty recent development in pro wrestling that they're hiring, TV comedy writers. Yeah,
because it was probably Vince Russo, who wrote for their magazine, and Ed Ferrara. They were the writers, and they left. They jumped ship to WCW, which is now out of business. And then it was around there that they brought in, kind of like TV writers. I think they brought in like Brian Gewirtz, who's one of the guys that hired me. Yeah, and then from there, it was just, there's been a long list. I would actually love to see a list of everyone who's ever written there. Because there are people who are still there who they've seen so many guys come and go. I'm sure they couldn't even remember who they used to work with, It's a crazy thing. But at any rate, there was a lot of comedy writers who knew that I was a big wrestling fan and reached out to me. So it was like, when I first got the initial email about it, like, hey, you should contact this guy. They're looking for people with TV writing experience and who like wrestling. Maybe 3 or 4 more people over that month and a half, 2 months, reached out to me. It was like, hey, you should check this out. So there was a lot of people pushing me in that direction.
And it sounds like you didn't have to be pushed hard.
No. Not at all.
Have you been a wrestling fan your whole life?
Absolutely.
It seems like something you pick up. It's like smoking. You pick it up in childhood.
You're right. Yeah, because my earliest memories are watching wrestling. Like one of my very, very early, small, like a little kid. I remember watching Hulk Hogan train the ring announcer, one of the interviewer broadcaster types, Mean Gene Okerlund, training him to fight, because they were going to be in a tag team match against George Steele and Mr. Fuji. I'll never forget that, watching that. I've watched it again now, and I'm like, I can't believe how quick it is. It felt like it was like hours and hours. It was just so epic,
A lot of people, myself included, get into pro wrestling when they're kids, but most grow out of it. And I'm trying to phrase this in like the least insulting way possible. Just what was it about pro wrestling? Why did you stay a fan?
I don't know. It was the only sport that I liked. Like, I don't watch baseball, I don't watch football. Like, I watch the Super Bowl, but that's just because it's just kind of a cultural touchstone. And I actually, it's not even that I'm not even into mainstream sports. I dislike them. I dislike the culture. I dislike the aggressiveness of it, and especially being a kid, it's like, the other kids that are into sports and they're better at it than you, and they let you know it, and you just kind of feel like a jerk. It's just the only sport where everybody was happy. You know what I mean? Like the fan, you go to like a Boston Red Sox game, you could get into a fight with another Boston Red Sox fan. Like you don't even have to be wearing a Yankees hat to, wind up getting a black eye. It's like you go to a wrestling match, everybody's having a good time. Nobody leaves upset. Even if your guy lost, that he'll be made whole again. It was definitely that, but it was definitely just sheer luck that I was at that really impressionable, like 4 or 5 years old when Hulk Hogan became the biggest thing in the world, you know? But I mean, I didn't grow out of it. I mean, there was maybe a couple years when I stopped watching it, but it's funny, like once I got back into it, really into it, those are my favorite years now. Now I'm like, damn it. Like I turned off my set right as it started getting spectacular. And then I've just never been able to turn away from it again. And the internet really helped too, because it's like there's so much more to it than just what happens on the TV. And that became fascinating.
So what was it like when you were going through the interview process? What was the hiring process like to become a writer for the WWE?
You know, you write a sample.
Right away, I don't know what you're talking about. Write a sample what?
Right, like a sample, like take something that's on TV right now, take a storyline or an angle, and just bring it to a conclusion. So it's kind of like, all right, these two guys don't like each other. They've been working a TV program. Where would you go with it? How would you resolve it?
What do you actually write down? Is it like a page? Is it a paragraph?
I think what I wrote, and then there was no, you know, obviously because I'd never seen one of their scripts before, so I didn't know how to write the way that they wrote.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
I just wrote like it was almost like a list of just on this date, this would happen, because it was also very, I think it didn't have to be very detailed, you know? It was maybe one promo or one backstage you had to write out, you know, like the full dialogue, but the rest of it was just very general. It was like, and it was also open. It was kind of, they were looking for someone, at least from what I could tell, it seems like they were looking for someone who kind of already had an instinct for it, writing that way, you know? And I think that's why I got it, because, I mean, aside from just, you know, having a very, you know, deep understanding and knowledge of the product and being, you know, because it's much more important to them that you know how to write a TV show than being a wrestling fan. It's much more important. You need to be a writer first and a wrestling fan second.
Do you remember what you submitted, like what your wrestling spec script was?
I don't exactly. I mean, I remember it had to do with Sheamus and Christian were feuding at the time. And it was kind of, you know, because I knew I was going into it as a comedian. And I was like, well, I might as well, you know, it's just like with stand-up, they say, write what you know or write to your strengths. So I tried to make it funny. And I tried to make it, you know, about, it was Christian's the heel. He was the bad guy. And he's basically picking on Sheamus for being Irish, which I am too. And it just made it easy on myself of just him, Christian doing awful things, like putting a bunch of potatoes in Sheamus's locker. I remember as one thing. You know, that kind of classic bully, you open up your locker and, it's just full of potatoes and they all fall out. Stuff like that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So then you get the job. What is your day-to-day life like? What do you actually do there?
Well, it's interesting. It's just throwing shit against the wall, you know? I mean,
Is that wall Vince?
No. There's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not buffers, but there's just a lot of steps in between, you know, because we would be, as a brand new writer, we would be pitching stuff to the lead writer or the head writer. And then they would wind up going into a pitch meeting with Vince and, you know, get his feedback. And then, you know, anything, it being a live show and a very unique live show, usually everything would change at TV anyway.
What would make things change? Like, what would happen that would, cause one of those moments where you're like, oh my God, we got to rewrite the ending of this scene? Vince
is the only deciding factor, and Vince has final say about everything. I mean, there's some talent who are very high up that they have a lot more say or they can go to, whoever and be like, I don't want to do this. But I mean, it's Vince's show. It's all up to Vince. So I mean, but that being said, there are so many things that could happen because it's not, like I said, it's not like a regular TV show. You're not gonna, say like I'm writing on How I Met Your Mother. Jason Segel is not going to dislocate his shoulder and not be able to, be on the show that night. So there would be factors like that, or because they're not just actors, they're athletes as well. So physically things would happen. I mean, there's drug testing. If somebody got suspended, there's about a million different things that could happen that'll change the show, and it usually would. Or, like it's a live show as well. If somebody says something that they're not supposed to, and now it's out there, and it's like, oh, he was supposed to say black, now he said white. We have to rewrite everything. He went left when he was supposed to go in a circle.
So sometimes they'll just go off script.
Yeah.
Probably Jason Segel, like, while they're shooting How I Met Your Mother, doesn't, like, change the ending while he's on stage, and they have to work around that.
Exactly. And plus it's, you're dealing with a lot of different strong personalities too. And it's like, you're not going to be writing for How I Met Your Mother and Jason Segel's like, I don't want to work with Neil Patrick Harris, that type of stuff. Very interesting.
Who are those strong personalities? Are those the wrestlers?
Oh my God. Everyone is a strong personality in that world. The seamstresses were strong personalities.
Oh my God. So like, who are some of those people backstage? Obviously you've got the wrestlers and their characters, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about that, but like, so you got seamstresses. Who else are you dealing with on a regular basis here?
Oh, everyone, man. I mean, the costume people, the ring crew, the pyro guys, I mean, just the crew itself. You got to deal with the stage managers, and if you're doing a backstage, you got to, I mean, it's like the TV truck. There's just it is a huge endeavor, and you're in a different city every single week, and that's just if you're at TV. It's SNL in a different city every week, no reruns, no off season, and just the Monday show is 3 hours. That's a 3-hour live show, and there's probably another hour for the live audience of bits and pieces of other shows, and then Tuesday they're doing 4 shows, and that's probably about 4 hours. If you're just sitting in the arena watching the show, you're watching about a good, solid 4 hours of wrestling. And that's a lot, man.
Yeah. Is that what made the job so demanding?
Yeah. I mean, the travel is just monumental.
So you're always traveling to wherever the show is that week, and it's always somewhere different.
If you're on the road with them at TV, yeah, because there's 2 different teams. You could be on the home team and just writing in Stamford, or you could be traveling with them, like generally, Saturday to Sunday, Saturday or Sunday to Wednesday.
And you were on the traveling team.
I did both. I kind of did half and half. If I was there for a year, I did like 6 months at home and 6 months on the road.
Why'd you switch?
I couldn't take it. At first, well, it's an honor. It's an honor to be at TV because that's you're really in the shit there. You're on the front line, like that's, you're with all the wrestlers, you're with Vince, you're with all the executives. I mean, that is the heart and soul of like being at TV. Not that the people in Stamford don't work as hard, but I mean, it's just physically demanding, just the actual travel. And, then Monday, as soon as the show's over, and it's, the show goes from like 8 to 11. So depending on where we are in the country, I mean, you're not going to get out of the arena till like maybe close to midnight. And then you got to drive to, God willing, the next town is only a couple hours away. And then you got to get up the next morning on Tuesday and do the whole thing over again. It's really intense.
It sounds very difficult. But did you get any crazy road stories out of it?
Not really. I mean, probably the most exciting thing, and it sounds kind of stupid, but it was one of the big things, because like they're all athletes, and even like the executives, it's very health conscious, and there's a lot of I mean, so that being said, they hate smoking. They hate cigarettes. Hardly any of the other people like, and I was a cigarette smoker at the time, and just like sneaking out of the arena and trying to smoke and hold it away from you and not smell like cigarettes, or like, going to the next hotel in the next city and not knowing if the executives were going to be there, if you were going to get in trouble. And so it's just kind of like hiding. That was really it. I mean, there wasn't much.
That was the mischief you got into?
That was as mischievous as I got. Was, like, you go out drinking, but I mean, it's just like you go out drinking and blow off some steam and then go to bed. But like, that was kind of like, ooh, I'm being bad. I hope I don't get caught, type of shit.
You are primarily, I know you as a comedian, you're an actor. Was this like your first like day-to-day job where you're working with the same people every day?
Yeah, since I got into entertainment, yeah. I mean, like, I've never been, like, the closest steady thing was like, I was in a bunch of Verizon commercials, but I mean, that would be like every couple of months we would shoot something and you'd see the same people. This was every single day.
Yeah, you have a boss, you have colleagues, there's like office politics, I'm sure, that kind of stuff. Just the regular things that come with having a job.
Yeah, and since I stopped working a day job, this was the first time I'd been back inside an office. Yeah, for sure.
Did you find that to be a difficult adjustment?
No, it was kind of nice actually, like a set schedule, because with stand up it's all on you. It's like you got to motivate yourself to get up or get out or go to the show or to write. Whereas this is an environment where you have to, and you have someone to answer to, but like the structure was nice. It was something that I hadn't, it was almost relaxing having a structure, because it was like there was no debate in my head of whether or not I don't feel like writing right now, I'll get to it tomorrow. I just had to.
But now that since you've left, has that been a difficult adjustment back?
No, because I mean it's still see, I mean, now it's kind of quite the opposite. Now it's nice, kind of, I can kind of work at my own pace, my own level.
Sounds like you have a very positive, grass is always greener on this side kind of outlook.
I guess so. I never really thought about it.
Were you like the comedy guy, or did they go to you like for the the lighter fare?
Yeah, like there would be times, like a lead writer would pull me in his office and be like, we need to make this funny. And, I would riff and off some ideas or whatnot. Or I would be given something flat out, like, we have this with, I would be given the characters or the wrestlers that were more comedic or more light, generally, given stuff like that, or, situations. Like they just did... we were supposed to do a cross promotion thing with Charlie Sheen, and he's got his show called Anger Management. So they wanted somebody to write two of the wrestlers, Daniel Bryan and Kane, go to Anger Management. So like I wrote the first pass on those and stuff like that. But I mean, it was also... I was lucky too, because I was extremely knowledgeable, not just of like old wrestling, like even the current product. Like I was still up to date on everything. So I could write anything they wanted, but there's no denying that my strength was writing comedy, for sure.
Are there a lot of writers there that just don't know about professional wrestling? They're just TV writers who fell into this job?
Yeah. Like while I was there, I saw a lot of people come and go. Because I mean, they, like I said, they put the emphasis, and which they need to. I mean, it's supposed to be like any other TV show. Like they've been known to hire, because the soap opera industry is completely falling apart, if not already dead. So like they would bring in a lot of soap writers to work on it, and which is the perfect fit. It's a soap opera. It's a weekly soap opera.
Did the soap opera writers have any difficulty adjusting to the world of professional wrestling?
I'm sure some of them did, because they weren't there by the time I got there. But like there was one guy who's still there and still, thriving, and he's a tremendous asset to the company.
And he had never watched wrestling, or he'd never been a fan of wrestling before.
I feel like anybody that had been there who wasn't a fan could at least say they watched it when they were a kid, or they watched it, depending on the age, they watched it during like the late 90s during Stone Cold and The Rock and that type of shit.
So there are writers there that don't know anything about wrestling. What about the other side of the coin? Are there any people there who have no experience writing, but they're such huge wrestling fans that they have been called up and given this job?
I guess so. I guess you could say that. You know, there are people who have just like a sports writing background, or had like wrote like a wrestling column or blog for a newspaper, that type of stuff. Or they're just guys who were huge wrestling fans that like right out of school, right out of college, got like an internship, or let's say a just like a writer's assistant job, and have, you know, just found their niche already and have like, you know, gone up the ladder from there.
How many writers are there total working on this product?
I couldn't say at this point. I mean, because it changes. Like when I started there, there was a huge exodus of either people they had let go or people that had quit. But mostly they fired just like a ton of people. And so there was, you know, I was kind of part of a new wave of writers. So, but I mean, maybe I would assume they want maybe like a dozen. 6 at home, 6 on the road.
Wow, I'm surprised it's that few.
Well, I mean, there used to be more, because I mean, like I said, because it's the big shows. They do Monday Night Raw, and then they tape SmackDown on Tuesday. Like at one point, there were maybe, God, if it's a 2-hour show, there was 11 segments. There might have been 11 writers on each show. But I mean, like it's new to them too. It's new to the company. They're still trying to figure out their groove, and because I mean, it's like I said, they go through a lot of writers, and a lot of it is just guys and gals who quit, and they're like, "This isn't a TV writing job," and it's not. It is not typical at all. You know, because like say you're at TV, you're not just writing; you have to produce, you know, backstages or in-ring promos segments, you know. And you got to communicate with the TV truck and tell them what's going on, and you know who's going to say what next, and make sure you stay on this guy's face. His expression's going to change. He's about to turn heel, or whatever. You know.
It sounds like you're producing, maybe even directing your own segments too.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that actually brings me to I've been wondering, what exactly do you write? Because from my layman's view, it seems like there is, like you were just saying, there's like the backstage stuff, the promos that they're saying.
Yeah.
You help them write those lines, right?
Yeah.
And then we already talked about you write the overall story, you know, the ebb and flow of the bad guys, who's good, who's bad, who's winning, who's losing, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what about like the individual matches, just beat by beat? This move, then that move, then this move. Is that something that's scripted?
No, not by us.
It's done by the wrestlers?
The wrestlers work with... they used to call them road agents. Now they call them producers. They're old retired wrestlers who can help put together a match. So say like back in the 90s when it was like Jim Ross and Jim Cornette, they could talk the wrestler's language, and they could run through a match with them and like, oh, you should do this, pick it up here, pick it up there, blah 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 blah. But now it's the producers that do that. It's old retired wrestlers like, you know, Arn Anderson and Michael P.S. Hayes and guys like that who are brilliant. Michael Hayes is just brilliant at booking a wrestling match, and just creatively, just him. I could listen to him talk for hours.
Well, what does he do that makes him so brilliant?
He just gets it, man. He just even a old, I feel like I've seen it all wrestling fan, and I try not to be cynical. He can surprise me, and he'll throw out an idea. He's like, well, I was thinking about doing this, and then he's just like, oh my God, that would be awesome.
And are these like lines someone's gonna say? Are they storyline ideas? Are they specific moments in the match where someone looks like they're going to pile drive someone, but it's reversed?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've heard Michael say all sorts of things that I was just like, God, that would be the coolest thing in the world I've ever seen. You know, like, you know, I remember once he was talking about like so-and-so doing his finishing move to so-and-so, but on the top of a ladder. And I was just like, oh my God, that'd be absolutely sick. Or like, if so-and-so becomes a bad guy, here's a list of the people he could fight over the next few months. And I'm just like, oh my God, I want to see all these matches, stuff like that. But when we're writing the show, when we would write the show, it's funny, I still talk of it in terms like I'm still there, because it is very much a part of me. I still have dreams that I work there fairly frequently. And I wouldn't even call them like nightmares, but like they're definitely, and I've talked to other ex-writers, and they're like, every so often they'll be like, oh my God, I had a work dream last night. But I mean, by and large, when the writers are writing the show, we have to pitch what the matches will be on the show. Like, I think so-and-so should fight so-and-so, but there kind of needs to be a reason. They can't just be cold matches like the regular season of any other sport. It's just like, okay, it's time for the Red Sox to play against the Marlins. It's just that's what's happening right now. They have to be much more storyline driven. There have to be a reason why this match is happening. And if we have to like set up a backstage earlier to set this up, or in Seg 1, there's going to be the general manager who's evil is going to come out and start running their mouth, and then some good guy like Shaman is going to come out and be like, I don't like what you're saying. Oh yeah, well you're not going to like who you're fighting tonight. But then we'd also have to write the finish of the match, basically find the way out, or just say who's going to go over, who's going to win, and why. And it's a delicate little. It's very difficult to do, because it's you kind of. Because whoever's going to lose, are they going to look like shit? Or are they going to be able to come back from it? And, you got to kind of protect both guys. It's very interesting.
It sounds kind of like a puzzle
Yeah.
where you have to think. You're thinking a few moves ahead as you plan the outcome to any match.
That's absolutely right. Because it's also, you try to map out, an entire grid of they're going to fight here this week, and then next week this is going to happen, then the week after that's going to happen, and that'll lead to the pay-per-view match. But then after the pay-per-view, then this is going to happen, and then that's going to happen. And it always changes. Every week it'll change. You try really, really hard. It's almost like predicting the weather. The further out it is, the less likely that you're going to be right, that this is actually how it's going to happen. Whereas, as opposed to, well, this weekend we know that this is definitely going down.
How far ahead do you plan? Because it's not like Mad Men where they're like, all right, we got 2 more seasons.
Yeah.
That means there's 16 more hours of Mad Men. Wrestling's going to go on, as far as I can tell, for eternity. There's no end to it in sight.
Yeah, exactly. It's very compartmentalized too, because I wasn't privy to a lot of Vince meetings where even some of the guys, we're on the same level. We're all writers, but they would come out of the Vince meeting, and they wouldn't be able to say what was discussed. Because I've heard things that Vince knows what he wants to do for, like this year will be WrestleMania 29. I remember hearing last year Vince already knows what he wants to do for WrestleMania 30. And that's great, and thank God. I'm sure Vince knows what he would want to do for WrestleMania 50, whether he's around to see it or not. But it's from the writer's standpoint, we try desperately to write out as far out as we can, and try to stick to it as much as we can. And God knows the wrestlers would want us to do it as well. But it's just the nature of what that show is and what that business is that makes it very, very difficult. Because I don't like so many things can happen. There was one time while I was there, they were down in, oh God, I want to say Brazil. They were just doing a house show, just doing a live, wrestling show for somewhere in South America. And the bad guy, the heel, Chris Jericho, he did what, it's just a classic old school heel move, and somebody had like a flag. Say they were in Brazil. I honestly can't remember what country they were in, and he did something to the flag. Either he wiped his hands on it, or he put it on the ground and stepped on it. Something like that, something stupid that just to get the people in the crowd to hate you.
Right, like the Iron Sheik.
Yeah, exactly. The Iron Sheik would go and waving the Iran flag, and Nikolai Volkov would be next to him with the Soviet flag, and they would start singing the Soviet national anthem, and they would, spit on the American flag, stuff like that. It's just it's cheap, but it works. It's old.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, in this particular country, wherever they were, let's say it was Brazil, it is illegal. It is it is a punishable by jail time to do anything to their flag. So this became like a big deal. And, and the company responded appropriately. They suspended Jericho. So it's like, that's a situation where it's not even an injury that has to force and change things, or somebody, failing a drug test, or God knows what, somebody, just God forbid there's a car crash or just a flight delay. There's so much that can go wrong that'll change everything and it's not even like, oh, this guy can be there at TV. He's not going to be there at all. He's not going to make it to this pay-per-view that we've been trying to build all month. We got to change everything now. It's crazy. It's really crazy. And somehow they pull it off.
Before, you mentioned that you were sometimes given certain wrestlers. Is that how it worked, where like you had a guy and like that was your guy and you were writing for him for months and you learned his voice and that kind of thing?
No, I mean, higher up, guys that have been there much longer, you would find much more of a situation like that. Like, for example, Brian Gewirtz was just there when he started. It was about the time that The Rock was really starting to break out. And Brian's just a brilliant guy, really smart writer, clever, and funny. And I think he and Dwayne Johnson really came together, and this is also just my speculation, that they kind of came up with, they made The Rock who The Rock is. I mean, it could also have just been a situation where Brian had a couple of really good lines and The Rock was like, oh, this guy's funny, I want to keep him around. But it's basically Brian's The Rock's writer. Whereas, I would get thrown, Santino and Zack Ryder are kind of goofy. So, let's have McCarthy write their insert or their promo or something, stuff like that. But it was never, there were guys I worked with more often than not. I worked with The Miz a lot. And I worked with Damien Sandow. See, I could work with the heels who were kind of an old school piece of shit heel who would just go out there and just take a dump on the crowd and be like, look at you people, you're idiots,
That sounds like a lot of fun, actually.
It is, man. It makes perfect sense why Andy Kaufman got so obsessed with pro wrestling and wanted to be a heel. Because that stuff he was doing, it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And he was just perfect at it. And he loved antagonizing an audience. And it's just so much fun. Like, I was the Fordham University mascot.
I didn't know that.
I was.
I should have listed that in the intro.
I was the Fordham Ram for 2 years. But at any rate, when I was the Ram, it would be much more fun antagonizing the other team's fans than kind of encouraging our fans to cheer.
You also mentioned that there were like these secret meetings going on. Were you sworn to secrecy when you took the job?
Well, it's interesting because, the business has been exposed and it is very much out of the closet.
Yeah, like I was a little worried that you wouldn't be able to talk about this job at all. Like I don't know how open the WWE is that it's not real. Like it was always an open secret, but they didn't talk about it. So where does the company stand on that now, and how did that relate to your job?
Well, it's funny because the business is exposed, but there is still an air of you're kind of getting to see behind the curtain and you're privy to information. Everybody knows that wrestling is a show, but they still treated it like, you trying to expose the business, boy? You trying to... But it was very much... the concern is much more because it's a live show every single week, and there is such a prevalence of spoilers on the internet. That was much more the concern, that we're not gonna I was privy to who was gonna win at like next year's Wrestlemania. I wouldn't be able to talk about that. That's the type of thing that they're much more concerned about, of just like spoiling storylines, or like they just announced today that Bruno Sammartino is going to go into the Hall of Fame. Like, had I known that leading up to it, that's what would have upset them. But the only thing I really had to sign said like I can't talk about anything that I was privy to that the average fan wouldn't already know about.
It seems like the average fan knows a lot these days. I imagine the internet is like really, gave them a kick in the ass where they got to stop pretending that it was real. Because at that point, why bother? Everyone has like all the inside information, or at least a lot of it.
Definitely. I mean, it was much more in the. I mean, believe it or not, it was much more in the '80s. Like Vince himself is kind of the one who, not kind of. Vince is the one who exposed the business. I mean, the first video they put out in the Coliseum video WWF collection was bleeps, bloopers, and body slams, and that just completely exposed the business for what it was. It was entertainment. That's like we're putting on a show.
I remember there was once where classic Stone Cold maneuver, like put Vince McMahon in a limo and blew it up, or maybe the Undertaker blew it up. Someone blew up Vince's limo,
right?
And then the next day, the WWE, or maybe it was like a day or two later, had to put out a press release that was something to the effect of like, our CEO is fine. It's all part of the show. They had to come out and explain it. So there is still like a little bit of pretense. Like they knew they had to explain it. It's such an interesting level of reality to me.
Yeah, it's strange. Sometimes they'll give the audience a lot of credit, and sometimes they can kind of belittle the audience. It's strange. It's a very strange relationship they have with their viewers. But it's clearly a show, and they've definitely embraced it, and they've changed the industry into what it is today by doing that. But I mean, there were like subtler things, like all the wrestling matches are exhibitions, like with the state athletic commissions, wherever they, say they're in the Madison Square,
right.
They're in the Garden. It's an exhibition. It's not. So then that way they're not subject to, I don't know, all the
some tax
details.
Or something.
Yes, some bullshit. Yeah, exactly.
What is your goal when you're writing something for the WWE? Like, what are you trying to achieve?
Well, it's funny you asked me that, because there were always two different answers from Vince. If I was asked what my job is, the answer he would be looking for is either my job is to do everyone else's job, or my job is I put smiles on people's faces. Which sounds really good, but it doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot.
What are the qualities that make a good wrestling match, like that do that for people?
It's just like any story, It just has to be compelling. You have to have two compelling characters, and at its most base, two compelling characters, and then a struggle, and then hopefully the audience, more than anything in the world, wants to see the baby face, the good guy overcome evil.
It's funny how everyone's like so savvy to what's going on, and that there is a heel and that there is a baby face. Yet it just still works. Like there's something about seeing the hero win that even when it's not real, like just hits that base level of your brain, your monkey brain.
Well, yeah, I mean, shit. You go see the new Spider-Man movie. I could bet you $1,000 that Spidey's not going to wind up in a wheelchair at the end of the movie and throw his costume away, and the Green Goblin's gonna, run off with Mary Jane Watson. It's what's going to happen. They're going to get together at the end of the movie. You go, but you still go to watch how it happens. You know that Superman's going to beat Brainiac, but you want to see how he does it this time. It's funny because I've never understood the argument of people being like, well, why would you watch wrestling? It's fake. And I'm like, well, what are you watching on TV that's real? I mean, Christ, even the reality TV is fake.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the news is fake. I mean, come on, let's be honest. It's just entertainment. It's no different than getting caught up in a movie.
And now that I'm thinking about it that way, it does sound kind of fun to go see the new Spider-Man movie with a stadium full of people and cheer for the parts I like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would be no different than here's something that I always thought would be a riot, and I still want to do it someday. I want to go to a Harlem Globetrotters game and root for the Washington Generals and just start screaming like, traveling, travel. oh, come on, ref, that type of stuff. Because that's what I would always do at a wrestling match anyway. It's just like screaming at the referee is probably the funnest thing in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
And everybody in the section gets a kick out of it because they're like, oh my God, this guy's, because you're just trying to enjoy it. I mean, shit, you go see Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, they're going to play free falling at some point, but it's just, exactly what's going to happen. You go see Kiss. That's the great example. You go see Kiss. They are literally going to do the exact same show that they have been doing for 20 years, man. And you still go because it is a spectacle and it is the coolest thing you could ever see, and it's fun. Gene's going to spit out blood. That there's going to be fire and explosions, and they're going to play rock and roll all night. That's why you go. You go to wrestling because you want to see The Rock beat the bad guy. You want to see John Cena, drop an elbow. It's just, there's something comforting about that, I think, too, as well. Send him home happy, that type of thing.
We've mentioned him a few times now. Did you get to work directly at all with Vince McMahon?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
What was your read on him? What was that like? Because it seems like he's so singularly responsible for this huge organization, this huge corporation, and I can't think of anyone else like that. Like most CEOs aren't also the head writer, the face of the company, and all these other things.
Sumner Redstone doesn't walk into the writer's room of Workaholics and say, "What are you guys doing this week?" It's a bizarre thing that he's the CEO and chairman of a publicly traded company. He is a multi-millionaire, billionaire at one point. I don't think he is anymore, but you have to answer to him, and you have to talk to him, and you have to pitch ideas to him, and very intimidating. But also very fascinating.
Yeah, like what was he like personally? And I'm not looking for dirt or anything. I'm just how does someone get to that level? What kind of person is he?
He wanted to do things his way, and I don't think that you become the emperor by not doing things your way, and clearly he knows what he's talking about. What's fascinating is one time I was in the little backstage area where you're on the headsets and their monitors and where Vince sits and, they time out the show. It's called the gorilla position, named after Gorilla Monsoon, because I guess he invented the position. He's just like, we should just have a table next to the, right behind the curtain. And, if you're a writer, you would go there if you had a segment coming up or if, at any rate. So I'm on headset listening and it's just a small, simple little thing. But as a performer, it completely blew my mind. Because Vince is in direct contact with, the producer, and then the producer is talking to the referee who has a little, earbud in his ear. And which you can see when you're watching a match. You can see the little, curly wire like this Secret Service have in their ear. The referee has them. And then he'll deliver information to the performers in the ring. Just things like, speed it up, slow it down. You got this much time left, whatever. The bad guy was just beating up the good guy in the ring, right? And I hear Vince scream, because it's a tag match. It's two bad guys versus two good guys. And Vince screams, somebody put on a hold. Somebody put a hold on him. These people are dead. I'm like, what is he talking about? And then immediately the bad guy puts the good guy in like a headlock, and then they're just down on the mat and he's holding him in the hold. And like clockwork, the audience starts clapping and like they're like cheering. They're like, come on, come on. They're like rooting for the good guy to get out of this hold. And I was blown away. I'm like, this is amazing. This guy's just sitting back here watching this on TV, and he is genius at working the audience and getting them to do exactly what he wants them to do. So you can't take anything away from him. I mean, it is just, you don't get to be a billionaire. You don't get to be the dominant force in an art form and put everyone else out of business, not just nationwide, but you could even argue internationally, without being absolutely brilliant at what you do. But I mean, like, dealing with him is very difficult. I don't know that I've met many geniuses, before, but from my experience now, it would seem that they would be rather difficult personalities to deal with, just by the sheer nature of who they are. They're not like the rest of us.
I love that he still goes out to yell at the wrestlers, to sometimes participate and get rock bottomed or whatever it is himself, because
I know.
he doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do any of this. Like, obviously, he could hire someone to run any aspect of this. He could retire himself completely, but you can tell just because he's going out there that he just loves this shit and that his passion is like very genuine for it. Is that true?
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. What was it like working with the wrestlers? What kind of people were they?
They're cool, I mean, most of them were cool. A lot of them were very insecure, which was kind of, nice, actually, that you're like, this is just a regular guy. This is a real person,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at the same time, it's also, it was kind of like a duh moment, because you tend to not put 300 pounds of pure muscle frame if you're comfortable with who you are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, coming from the world of stand-up comedy, I always figured, well, there's no one more insecure than a comedian. But no, there's wrestlers. The wrestlers are pretty insecure, because you also have, because it's funny that it's the combination. It's probably the only combination in the world of entertainer and athlete. Usually it's one or the other. Usually you become an athlete because you're just a workhorse, and maybe you've just got some genetic gifts and you can just do that, and you're good at it. Or I think a lot of entertainers become entertainers because, they're not so coordinated, maybe.
Yeah, it's a really rare mix that way. Can you think of any other job that combines both that athleticism and that desire to entertain?
Because even somebody who's like a Dennis Rodman, who's just got a lot of personality in their field, he's still just an athlete. That's it. He's just putting a lot of flair on it. Or Muhammad Ali, he's working a character. But I mean, that's all pro wrestling. That's straight up. He was trying to be Gorgeous George, even by his own admission. It's funny. There's not enough, I don't think, respect for pro wrestling or acknowledgement for what a bedrock it is for popular culture. And it really is. You would not have, and all these gentlemen this is all by their own admission, you would not have Muhammad Ali or James Brown or even Bob Dylan without Gorgeous George in the 1940s and 50s.
I mean, James Brown, Muhammad Ali, I get. How does Bob Dylan relate to Gorgeous George?
Bob Dylan...
I feel like, by the way, I've just hit the exact cross-section of your interest where we're talking about classic rock and pro wrestling. Right,
exactly. Bob Dylan said it himself. He said that because he was Robert Zimmerman, he became Bob Dylan, It's like, he said, I wish I could think of the exact quote or where he wrote it. I think it was in one of his autobiographies. But Bob Dylan said that he was in like a crowd of people, and he was just starting to do his thing. And he said that Gorgeous George spotted him and winked at him, because he knew who he was. Just kind of give him a rub, just kind of give him a, hey, I see what you're doing, and you're doing a good job. And Bob Dylan said that Gorgeous George winking at him was all the encouragement he needed to become who he was.
Wow, cool.
I love that shit, man.
I guess I get a sense as you tell the story, it sounds very demanding. I don't know how anyone does it, so I guess, is that why you left? Just the time commitment?
Yeah. I mean, well, there are a lot of other things that I want to do. I never expected writing for WWE to be one of them. It's a dream I didn't know I had. Because, I mean, I remember seeing, like, online, when I graduated from college, like, their corporate website said, like, hiring writers must have 3 to 5 years experience in TV writing. I was like, well, that's not me. But it never even dawned on me that it could happen, and I can't even begin to express how lucky I feel that I actually got to do it. I mean, it really was a dream come true. I mean, it wore off. I realized this isn't for me. It's funny. There are lots of dreams. We can all have, sometimes there's the wrong dream.
And now that you're back in comedy, did you take any lessons from your stint in the WWE?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, just trying to be a little more disciplined, trying to work as hard as I did while I was there, trying to impose deadlines on myself, that type of thing. But I mean, in general, just having a much more confidence in myself, just having been in a room with Vince McMahon or like standing ringside with Vince at this past WrestleMania, just me and him going over the little funny little sketch that I wrote that was in the pay-per-view, and him kind of giving me notes and stuff, and just being like, I mean, God, if I can do this, I kind of feel like you can do anything type of thing. But just having confidence that I do know what I'm talking about, and I am a good judge of what's funny or what's not. Even if I was, because there would be situations where, because I have a remarkably different sense of humor than, say, like, the WWE programming does, and not every joke that I wrote not even got in. It's just not even got a reaction, not even got a laugh, or just they don't even not even get it, just don't even appreciate it. Just being able to look at that situation and be like, you know what, just because it bombed in in stand-up comedy terms, just because it didn't play in this room doesn't mean that it's not funny. Just kind of realizing, oh, this isn't where I should be. Like, I should be in entertainment, and I should be doing things that are funny. And if I'm writing them, then that's cool. If I'm performing them, even better. But this is not the place for it. So even in that, I appreciate them for that. Just being able to show me, here's something that you love, that you have loved your entire life, but you don't belong here. You need to go back outside of it and just keep watching. That's where you belong. You should be a spectator here. Good. And if you wanted to, you could do this the rest of your life and probably be very successful at it. But it ain't right. And deep down, I knew it wasn't right. And I knew it wasn't the place for me, which is just too bad.
But a learning experience, a good thing overall. You're still a fan. We covered that in the beginning.
Absolutely.
And now what are you up to? What are you working on now? Anything we can plug?
Yeah, I'm going to be doing my stand-up CD is still on iTunes, Come Clean, and you can listen to it on Spotify and Pandora and all that good stuff too. And I'll be working on a new hour. I'll probably be taping an hour special sometime in the spring, and people can check that out. And there'll be more Batman videos that we finished the Batman videos, and I think they're almost done, and you'll be seeing the rest of those, and they're very, very funny.
Yeah, I can't wait to see them.
I know there's one. We have one with Catwoman, and the other, I think the one that'll be coming out next is with the Penguin. We actually got Patton Oswalt to portray the Penguin.
That is incredible.
That is awesome, right? Talk about a situation where I walked in the room and I go, well, this was meant to be. This I don't screw Danny DeVito. This guy was born to play the Penguin.
That's awesome. I cannot wait to see that. Those will be up soon. And I'm so excited that I was able to complete the set, get all 3 front page film members on the show. I think it was Oren, then Pete, then you.
Awesome.
Not that we went in order of preference or anything. I was nervous that you couldn't talk about this stuff.
Well, I can and I can't. I mean, the discussion we had is completely allowable. We did not violate any contractual agreements with this discussion. There's plenty I could say that I shouldn't. There's plenty of stories I could tell you that, shouldn't be documented. But it's not even that I'm worried about their litigious nature or them coming after me or you or them taking this down. I just wouldn't, out of respect for them. It was a terrific experience. It truly is one of the most remarkable experiences of my life, and I will cherish it always. And the last thing I want to do is disrespect it. And I have nothing but, and I cannot, it's tough to explain how much I respect everyone involved in that organization, particularly the writers, just because, that's what I did, so I understand them the most. But I mean, the wrestlers and Vince and God, everyone, The seamstresses, the costume people, the makeup ladies, the wardrobe. I mean, it's just everybody there. The security people. I mean, come on. Everybody that is in that organization works their tail off, and I saw that firsthand. And I'm just happy that they, allowed me in. I'm a very lucky guy. Like I'm happily married, and I'm just incredibly in love with my wife. But she had a crush on me before I even realized it, because I just thought she was. It blew my mind. I thought she was out of my league. That's the closest I can equate it to, is just kind of like feeling like, oh wow, it is possible. Like I really can attain a dream. It's a strange thing. It's you kind of can only appreciate it once. I don't think I really appreciated my time there until I was able to give it some distance. Because it's probably been 3 or 4 months since I've been there, and I'm glad I'm at a point where I've just nothing but fond memories of it. Even the difficult times, I'm totally nostalgic for now. I love it.
That's a brave decision to leave something like that. I think it's difficult to do.
Yeah, it's crazy quitting a dream job. It's nutty, but I knew inside, I knew what I wanted, and I knew what was right. I mean, that's the reason I started doing stand-up to begin with, because I was working a day job.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of comedians have that feeling, or are able to get in touch with that that gut.
Yeah, because I was starting to get that kind of gnawing in my stomach again of, what are you doing here? Why aren't you doing something else? Because right before I started doing stand-up, I was very, very anxious and feeling like I wasn't living up to my fullest potential type of thing, So I kind of got to that point again. And I was like, this ain't for me.
It's a good feeling in that it's direction and that it gives you a place to go.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been dying for like a year or however long since you've been there to talk to you about it. I'm so glad we got to do it on the mic and share it with everyone else too.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for doing this, Matt.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for asking. I love talking about it.
That is it for this week's episode, but I am extremely excited, already looking in the future, to tell you about next week's episode, where my guest will be Eric Zimmerman. That is a name that may sound familiar to you if you are power listening, power binging on every Jeff Rubin show back to back, because Eric was on the show just a few weeks ago. He was at the live show at Video Game Debate Club. He is one of the creators of the metagame, and I don't remember if this came up actually while we were recording, but at least while we were backstage, we talked about how he is a professor of game design at NYU's Game Center. That is their program that studies games, video games, all types of games. I am not making this up. I went to college. I graduated college, and when I started hearing about this, when Eric was talking, it was the first time in my life where I heard about a college course, and I was like, wow, that sounds really interesting. That's something I genuinely would like to learn more about. And I was like, oh, I guess that's how you're supposed to feel about college all the time. That's how exciting this episode was to me. It opened my eyes to the possibility that college could be good. So here, as if that wasn't enough hype, here is a little taste of what that's going to sound like. Is the NYU Game Center the NYU Video Game Center, or do you also learn about board game design and card game design?
It is game in the broadest sense of game. So the NYU Game Center is now a department. We're a department of game design in Tisch School of the Arts. And we teach classes, so we have people come from all over the university and take classes in game design, game production, game scholarship. We also have an MFA program, a 2-year Master of Fine Arts program, and that just started this year. So some of the students that you saw when you were walking down the hallway to my office, that is our first crop of students that just started in September, and they're starting their second semester now. So So those students are getting an MFA in game design, a Master of Fine Arts in game design. In addition, the Game Center does lots of other stuff. For example, we have what we call the Open Library. It is a library of board games and mostly video games with more than 2,000 titles in the collection and all kinds of consoles, historical and present day, from Vectrex and Intellivision up through, PS3 and Xbox 360 and Kinect. So
you're telling me students have open access to classic and retro consoles and new consoles and games for all of them?
not only that, but we assign them as homework
This is
to play.
insane. This is like some topsy-turvy world. I cannot believe this exists. Believe me, that's a fun episode. I am extremely excited for you to hear it, and you will be among the first to know when it is up if you follow me on Twitter, where I am at Jeff Rubin Show, on Tumblr at jeffrubin.com, on my Facebook fan page, or, what am I forgetting, youtube.com/Jeff Rubin. And also, don't forget squarespace.com/piledriver. Big old nerdy episode coming next week. Can't wait to post it. See you guys there. Bye.